Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku trained under Yujiro Hanma for 10 years before he received 1 for all at 14 and got accepted into Class 1A. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The hollow joint. The sound of the rain against the window pane was the only thing filling the silence of the doctor's office. It was a rhythmic, uncaring drumming that seemed to count down the seconds of Izuku Midoriya's life, or at least the life he thought he was going to have. The doctor was an older man with a thick mustache and eyes that had seen too many crushed dreams to offer false hope. He tapped his pen against the backlit X-ray on the wall. To 4-year-old Izuku, the black and white skeleton looked like a map of a foreign country, a place he was forbidden from entering. "You should probably give it up, kid," the doctor said. The words didn't land like a slap. They landed like a guillotine. Izuku sat on the edge of the examination table, his legs swinging idly, stopping abruptly as the sentence processed. His hands were clutching his limited edition All Might action figure, the Silver Age variant. The plastic hero was smiling, fists on his hips, projecting an invincibility that Izuku suddenly felt slipping through his fingers like sand. Inko Midoriya, sitting beside him, looked as if she had been struck. "Doctor, are you sure? All the other kindergartners have started showing signs." "Izuku is the only one who—" "It's simple biology, Mrs. Midoriya," the doctor interrupted, his voice devoid of malice but heavy with finality. He pointed to the foot on the X-ray. "Look here. The pinky toe. In the evolution of quirk users, the extra joint in the pinky toe has disappeared. It's a vestigial trait, signaling a streamlined body capable of housing a quirk." He tapped the image again. 2 distinct bones. Izuku has 2 joints. It's rare nowadays, a genetic throwback. It means he has no quirk factor. He is, essentially, the previous model of human evolution. The previous model. Obsolete. Empty. Izuku looked down at his red sneakers. He wiggled his toes. He couldn't feel the extra joint. He couldn't feel the defect. He just felt cold. The ride home was a blur of neon lights and the swishing of windshield wipers. Inko tried to speak several times, her voice wavering, offering promises of other paths and safety, but Izuku wasn't listening. He was watching the reflection of the city in the glass. He saw heroes on billboards. He saw civilians using minor telekinesis to hold umbrellas. He saw a world of magic, a world of light, and he was sitting in the dark. When they got home, Izuku didn't go to the TV to watch the debut video. He didn't ask to play. He went to his room, locking the door for the first time in his life. He sat at his computer, the glow of the monitor illuminating his tears, watching All Might save 100 people in 10 minutes. "Fear not!" "Why?" "Because I am here." The door creaked open. Inko stood there, her heart breaking at the sight of her son trembling in the chair. Izuku turned, his eyes wide, swimming with tears, pointing a shaking finger at the screen. "Mom." His voice was a rasp, a sound too old for a toddler. Can I still be a hero like him?" He wanted her to say yes. He needed her to lie. He needed her to tell him that spirit mattered more than biology, that the heart of a hero was what counted. But Inko Midoriya was a kind woman, and because she was kind, she couldn't lie to him. She saw a boy with a target on his back. She saw a lamb walking into a slaughterhouse. She rushed forward, falling to her knees, wrapping her arms around him. "I'm sorry, Izuku. I'm so sorry," she cried into his shoulder. She apologized for his genetics. She apologized for his broken dream. Izuku didn't hug her back. His hand, still clutching the All Might figure, went limp. The action figure dropped to the carpet with a dull thud. That was the sound of Izuku Midoriya dying. 2. The Predator's logic. Kindergarten is a cruel place. It is a microcosm of society, stripping away the polite veneers of adulthood to reveal the raw hierarchy of nature. Within 48 hours, the word was out. Mukosei. Quirkless. Katsuki Bakugo took the news as a personal insult. To Katsuki, the world was a ladder, and he was destined for the top rung. Everyone else was support, stepping stones, or obstacles. But Izuku? Izuku wasn't even a stepping stone anymore. He was a pebble. You're not just weak, Katsuki sneered during recess, small explosions popping in his palms like firecrackers. You're nothing. You're Deku. Izuku stood near the sandbox, his head bowed. A circle of children surrounded them, some laughing, some watching with the morbid curiosity of seeing a bug crushed. I can still be a police officer, Izuku whispered, clutching the strap of his yellow backpack. Or a firefighter. With what? Katsuki lunged, shoving Izuku hard. Izuku fell back into the sand. He didn't fight back. He had been told by the doctor, by his mother, by society, that he was biologically inferior. When you are told you are glass, you begin to believe you will shatter if you strike stone. You just die, Deku! Katsuki yelled, smoke rising from his hands. You're a liability. If you try to help someone, you'll just be another victim for a real hero to save. Stay out of my way. Izuku looked up. He wanted to scream. He wanted to punch Katsuki in the face. But his arms felt heavy, leaden with the weight of his diagnosis. 2 joints, he thought. I lost before I was even born. He stood up, shaking the sand from his shorts. He didn't run home to his mother. He couldn't bear another apology. He walked past the school gates, past the route to his apartment, and kept walking. He walked until the city noise faded. He walked until the concrete turned to dirt. Mizudafu was a modern city, but it was bordered by dense, forested mountains, remnants of a wilder Japan. Usually, children were forbidden from the treeline. There were rumors of wild boars, of landslide risks, of villains hiding out. Izuku didn't care. He was 4 years old, and he was filled with a despair so black and heavy it felt like it was crushing his lungs. He climbed. His small sneakers slipped on wet roots. Briars tore at his shorts and scratched his legs, drawing beads of blood. He ignored the sting. Pain was better than the numbness. Pain was real. He reached a clearing near a rocky overhang, overlooking the city below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. The city lights were flickering on, thousands of quirks, thousands of special people living their special lives. Izuku inhaled. He filled his small, quirkless lungs with the mountain air. Raya! He screamed. It wasn't a hero's battle cry. It was the shriek of a wounded animal. He screamed at the city, at the doctor, at All Might, at God. He screamed until his throat felt like it was bleeding, until he fell to his knees, gasping, sobbing into the dirt. Why? He choked out, pounding his small fist into the earth. Why make me want it if I can't have it? Why is it me? The wind suddenly stopped. The birds, which had been chirping in the twilight, went silent. The crickets ceased their song. The forest held its breath, terror gripping the very atoms of the air. Izuku froze. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, not from cold, but from a primal instinct he didn't know he possessed. It was the feeling a rabbit gets when the shadow of the hawk passes over the grass. That was a pathetic noise. The voice was deep. It resonated in Izuku's chest, vibrating his ribs. It sounded like grinding stones. Izuku turned slowly, terrified. Sitting on a large boulder 10 meters away was a man. But calling him a man felt insufficient. He was a mountain carved into the shape of a human. He wore simple black pants and a black shirt that strained against muscles so dense they looked like twisted steel cables. His hair was a wild, crimson mane that defied gravity, flowing upward like a fire frozen in time. He was holding a thick glass bottle of whiskey, looking at it with boredom. He hadn't even looked at Izuku yet. I came here for quiet, the man said, crushing the neck of the bottle between his thumb and forefinger. Glass dust, not shards, dust, rained down. And instead I find a crying brat disturbing the peace. Izuku couldn't speak. His survival instinct was screaming at him to play dead. The man turned his head. His eyes were predatory slits, glowing with an inner ferocity. When those eyes locked onto Izuku, the boy felt a physical weight press him into the dirt. This wasn't a villain. This was something else. This was a natural disaster wearing skin. Well? The man grunted. Speak, boy. Before I lose interest. Izuku's voice squeaked. He swallowed, forcing courage from the depths of his soul. I was asking why. Asking who? The dirt? The man stood up. He was colossal. He towered over the landscape. Why were you screaming? Because I'm nothing, Izuku whispered, the tears returning. I have no quirk. I can't be a hero. I'm weak, the man scoffed. It was a terrifying sound. He began to walk toward Izuku. He didn't walk like a human. He glided, his upper body perfectly still while his legs ate the distance. Weak? You think you are weak because you lack a biological mutation? Because you cannot spit acid or float. He stopped 2 feet from Izuku. The man smelled of ozone, blood, and expensive tobacco. Look at me, the man commanded. Izuku looked up. I am Yujiro Hanma, the man said. The name meant nothing to Izuku, but the way he said it made the air vibrate. Do you see a quirk? Izuku blinked. He scanned the man. No mutant features. No glowing energy. Just muscle. And no, I have no quirk, Yujiro stated. He raised his hand and casually backhanded a pine tree next to him. There was no build-up. No winding up. Just a flick of the wrist. Crack boom. The tree, a foot thick, exploded. It didn't just snap. The wood shattered at the impact point, splinters firing out like shrapnel. The top half of the tree crashed down, shaking the ground. Izuku's jaw dropped. That was just strength. Izuku gasped. That was barely a twitch, Yujiro sneered. He looked down at the boy. He had planned to ignore the child, or perhaps flick him away like a gnat. But Yujiro Hanma was a creature of whim, and he saw something. Most children, when faced with the ogre, wet themselves. They ran. They fainted. But this boy, this green-haired fragility, he wasn't running. He was shaking, yes. He was terrified, yes. But his eyes were glued to the stump of the tree. There was hunger in those tear-filled eyes. A desperate, starving madness. It reminded Yujiro of Baki. It reminded him of himself before he conquered the earth. You want to be a hero, Yujiro mocked, crouching down so he was face to face with the 4-year-old. Heroes are slaves. They are slaves to the weak. They protect sheep because they want the sheep to clap for them. All Might smiles because he is a performer. No! Izuku shouted. The defiance shocked even him. All Might smiles to show he's not afraid. Yujiro's grin widened. It was a shark's grin. Oh? And you? Are you afraid? Yes, but you're still standing here. Yujiro reached out. His hand was larger than Izuku's head. He placed a single finger on Izuku's chest, right over his heart. You have a defect, boy. Not in your toes, but in your brain. You have the sickness of the obsessed. Yujiro stood up, withdrawing his hand. Society tells you that you are empty. I tell you that emptiness is a container waiting to be filled. But not with tricks. Not with quirks. He looked at the moon, which was just beginning to rise. Power is not given, boy. It is taken. It is carved out of your own meat and bone. You want to stop crying? You want to make the world shut up? Izuku wiped his eyes. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm. Yes. Then throw away your dreams of being a hero, Yujiro said cold-bloodedly. A hero saves others. The strong do whatever they damn well please. I can make you strong, stronger than the explosive brat. Stronger than the teachers. Stronger than the symbol of peace. He looked back at Izuku. But the price is your humanity. You will cease to be a victim. You might cease to be a person at all. You will become a creature. Izuku looked at his hands. The hands that couldn't save anyone. The hands that were useless. Stay a rabbit and be eaten, he thought. Or walk with the tiger. Izuku looked up. The fear was still there, but the despair was gone, replaced by a cold fire. Teach me, Izuku said. Yujiro Hanma laughed. It was a deep, dark sound that made the mountains tremble. Good. Let's go tell your mother she's lost her son. 3. The contract. The door to the Midoriya apartment didn't open, it was simply filled. Inko had been pacing the living room, phone in hand, about to call the police. Izuku had been gone for hours. When the door opened, her relief washed over her for a split second before freezing into absolute, paralyzing terror. Izuku walked in, dirty, his knees scraped, his eyes hollow but dry. Behind him walked a giant. Yujiro Hanma had to duck his head significantly to enter the standard Japanese doorway. His shoulders brushed both sides of the frame. As he stepped onto the tatami mats, the floorboards groaned in protest, not just from his weight, but from the sheer density of his existence. "Aizuku?" Inko squeaked, backing up against the kitchen counter. She looked at the man. Every instinct she had as a mother screamed danger. Death. Predator. Who is this? "Evening, Mrs. Midoriya," Yujiro said. His voice was oddly polite, which made it infinitely more terrifying. He walked into the living room and sat on the sofa. The furniture dipped alarmingly. "I am Yujiro Hanma. I found your boy in the mountains screaming at the dirt." Inko rushed to Izuku, checking him for injuries. "Izuku! Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" "I'm okay, Mom," Izuku said quietly. He gently pushed her hands away. "He's going to train me." Inko blinked, her face pale. "Train you?" "Izuku, you're 4. You start kindergarten. You don't need." She looked at Yujiro, her voice trembling. "Sir, I think you should leave. Or I will call the heroes." Yujiro chuckled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a cigar. He lit it with a match struck against his own thumbnail. "Heroes. Go ahead. Call Endeavor. Call All Might. It would be an amusing warm-up." He blew a ring of smoke that drifted toward the ceiling fan. "Listen closely, woman. Your son is broken. Society has already discarded him. You know this. I saw it in his eyes. He is walking toward a cliff edge. In 10 years, he will either be dead by suicide, or crushed by a villain because he tried to play hero with a glass body." Inko sobbed, her hand covering her mouth. The brutality of the truth was a knife twisting in her gut. "I am offering an alternative," Yujiro continued, his eyes boring into her. "I am on vacation. I am bored. The boy has potential. Not physical potential. He is a scrawny rat, but he has the mental capacity for violence. I will take him." "Take him?" Inko shrieked. "You can't take him. He's my son." "I will not kidnap him," Yujiro said, waving his hand dismissively. "He will live here. He will go to school. But every morning at 4 a.m., and every afternoon after school, he belongs to me. Weekends belong to me. Holidays belong to me." Yujiro leaned forward, the demonic aura flaring up, filling the room with the scent of bloodlust. "If you refuse, he stays weak. If he stays weak, he dies. If he trains with me, he survives. It is that simple. And frankly..." Yujiro's eyes narrowed. "I have decided I want to do this. I am not asking for permission. I am informing you of his schedule." Inko was shaking so hard she couldn't stand. She looked at Izuku, begging him to say no, to say he wanted to stay and play with his toys. Izuku stepped forward. He looked small, so incredibly small against the backdrop of the ogre. "Mom," Izuku said. His voice was steady. "I have to do this." "Why?" Inko wept. "Why can't you just be happy being you?" "Because me isn't enough," Izuku said. "I want to be a hero, Mom. Even if I have to become a monster first." Inko looked at her son. She didn't see the toddler anymore. She saw the resolve of a man. She realized then that she could keep him safe in her arms and watch his soul wither, or she could let him walk into the fire and pray he didn't burn. She slumped to the floor, defeated. "Promise me," she whispered to the giant. "Promise me you won't kill him." Yujiro stood up, the deal sealed. He walked to the door. "I promise nothing," Yujiro said. "If he dies, he was never strong enough to begin with." He opened the door, the night air rushing in. "Boy. 4 a.m. Don't be late. And bring water. You'll need it to replace the blood." The door closed. 4. The first step into hell. The next 10 years were not a montage. They were a dissection. At 4 a.m. the next morning, Izuku stood at the base of the mountain. It was pitch black. The air was cold. Yujiro was waiting. He wasn't wearing a GI or training gear. He was wearing his street clothes, hands in his pockets. "Lesson 1, Yujiro said, looking down at the 4-year-old. "Do you know why the heroes rely on quirks? Because they are powerful." Izuku stammered. "Because they are lazy," Yujiro corrected. "A quirk is a cheat. It is a button you press to solve a problem. Fire. Ice. strength. They rely on the button. Take away the button, and they are frightened cattle. Yujiro pointed a finger at Izuku. The human body is the ultimate weapon. It is a machine designed for destruction. Every bone, every muscle fiber is a tool. But you are soft. Your bones are chalk. Your muscles are dough. What do we do first? Izuku asked, ready to run laps or do push-ups. Yujiro smiled. He pointed to a jagged, rocky incline that went up the side of the mountain. It was steep, covered in thorns and loose shale. Climb. Without a rope? If you fall, you break, Yujiro said simply. If you break, you learn not to fall again. Pain is the best teacher. Fear is the best fuel. Izuku looked at the climb. It looked impossible. Go. Izuku began to climb. Within 3 minutes, his hands were bleeding. Within 10 minutes, his legs were shaking uncontrollably. He slipped, scraping his chin against a rock, biting his tongue. He tasted copper. He cried. He sobbed as he climbed. Stop that noise, Yujiro's voice floated up from below. Tears are water leaving the body. You are dehydrating yourself. Izuku swallowed his sob. He grabbed a root. It snapped. He slid down 10 feet, tearing the skin on his forearms. He screamed in pain. He looked down. Yujiro was watching, impassive. He wasn't going to catch him. He really won't catch me, Izuku realized. If I let go, I die. The realization unlocked something in his brain. The limit that the human brain places on the body to prevent injury. Yujiro was forcing him to tear it down. Izuku dug his fingers into the dirt, ignoring the pain. He dug his toes into the rock. He clawed his way up, inch by agonizing inch. When he reached the top, an hour later he collapsed. He was covered in dirt, blood, and sweat. He couldn't feel his fingers. He heard a whoosh of air. Yujiro landed softly beside him, having jumped the entire distance in a single leap. Yujiro looked at the bloody mess of a boy. You're slow, Yujiro said. But you didn't quit. He nudged Izuku with his foot. Get up. Now we run down. And if you trip, the momentum will break your neck. Izuku groaned. Every nerve ending was on fire. He wanted his bed. He wanted his mom. Stay a rabbit and be eaten. Izuku forced himself up. His legs wobbled. He wiped the blood from his chin with a dirty hand. He looked at the ogre. I'm ready, Izuku rasped. Yujiro grinned. For the first time, it wasn't mocking. It was the grin of an artist looking at a blank canvas. Good. For the next 10 years, Izuku Midoriya, you are going to wish you were dead. And when we are done, death will run from you. The sun began to rise over Muzurifu, casting long shadows over the mountain. The age of heroes was continuing in the light, but in the shadows, the age of the ogre's successor had begun. The breaking of the vessel, age 6. Time, for the average child, is measured in school terms, summer breaks, and the release dates of video games. For 6-year-old Izuku Midoriya, time was measured in breaths. Specifically, how many breaths he could manage before his lungs felt like they were filled with crushed glass. 2 years had passed since the deal was struck. 2 years since the ogre had cast his shadow over the Midoriya household. The location was a dense, unregulated forest region in the northern Hokkaido mountains, a place Yujiro had dragged the boy to for a weekend excursion. There were no trails here. There was only snow, pine, and the silence of apex predators. Izuku stood in a clearing, the snow up to his shins. He was shivering, not just from the biting cold that seeped through his thin training GI, but from the object in Yujiro Hanma's hand. It was a handgun. A heavy, high-caliber revolver that looked like a toy in the ogre's massive grip. Reaction time, Yujiro lectured, his voice cutting through the icy wind. He spun the cylinder. It clicked ominously. The average human reaction time to a visual stimulus is 0.25 seconds. A bullet travels faster than sound. If you wait to see the flash, you are already dead. If you wait to hear the bang, your brain is already splattered on the tree behind you. Izuku's teeth chattered. He was covered in bruises from the morning's warm-up, which had involved dragging a log the size of a telephone pole up a frozen creek bed. But I can't move faster than a bee-bullet. No, Yujiro agreed. He raised the gun. You cannot outrun the bullet. You must outrun the intent. Yujiro's eyes narrowed. Don't look at the gun, boy. The gun is an object. It has no will. Look at me. Look at my finger. Look at my eyes. Before the muscle contracts, the thought occurs. You must sense the bloodlust. You must feel the desire to kill before the act takes place. I don't want to die, Izuku whimpered. Then move. Bang. The sound was deafening. Snow exploded to Izuku's left. He hadn't moved. He had frozen. Too slow, Yujiro said lazily. I aimed for your left ear. If I had aimed for your heart, Inko would be planning a funeral right now. He cocked the hammer again. Again. For the next 4 hours, the forest echoed with gunfire. Izuku ran. He scrambled through the snow, tripping over roots, diving behind trees. It wasn't training, it was a hunt. Yujiro walked casually, firing rounds that grazed Izuku's arms, his legs, his cheeks. Izuku screamed. He cried. He begged. But the bullets kept coming. He's going to kill me, Izuku's mind shrieked. He's really going to do it. Mom isn't here. All Might isn't here. Nobody is coming. Exhaustion set in. Izuku fell face first into the snow, his lungs burning. He couldn't get up. His legs were jelly. He heard the crunch of snow as Yujiro approached. He felt the cold steel of the barrel press against the back of his head. Boring, Yujiro whispered. You are still waiting for permission to survive. You think if you cry loud enough, the world will take pity on you. That is the logic of a victim. The hammer clicked back. Die. In that fraction of a second, something snapped in Izuku's brain. The fear, which had been a paralyzing fog, condensed into a sharp, electric spike. It wasn't courage. It was pure biological rejection of death. No, Izuku didn't think. His body moved on its own. He rolled violently to the right, kicking up a spray of snow. Bang! The bullet buried itself in the earth exactly where his head had been a microsecond before. Izuku scrambled back, panting, his eyes wide and feral. He stared at Yujiro. For the first time, he wasn't looking at the gun. He was looking at Yujiro's eyes. He saw the shift in the pupil. He saw the microscopic tension in the forearm. Yujiro lowered the gun. A slow, terrifying grin spread across his face. There it is, Yujiro purred. The animal inside the pet. You felt it, didn't you? The electrical signal of my intent. Izuku looked at his hands. They were shaking, but not from cold. They were shaking from adrenaline overdose. He felt alive. More alive than he had ever felt watching cartoons. I saw it, Izuku whispered. I felt you want to kill me. Good, Yujiro turned and walked away. Now get up. We have to forage for dinner. If you don't catch a bear, you don't eat. That night, Izuku ate raw venison by a fire, his hands stained with blood. He didn't complain about the taste. He didn't ask for cooked rice. He ate because his body demanded fuel. As he chewed, he looked at the fire, and the image of All Might's smiling face seemed a little fainter, a little less relevant. A hero saves others. But tonight, Izuku had saved himself. 2. The Hanma logic, age 9. By the time Izuku was 9, the scars had begun to accumulate. There was a jagged white line on his forearm from a knife disarm drill gone wrong. There was a patch of burned tissue on his shoulder from a heat tolerance exercise. His knuckles were permanently calloused, the skin rough and thick like leather. But the biggest change wasn't on his skin, it was in his notebooks. Inko Midoriya watched her son from the kitchen doorway. He was sitting at the dining table, surrounded by his famous hero analysis for the future notebooks. But he wasn't watching the news. He was watching a documentary on anatomy. Izuku? Inko asked gently. Dinner is ready. Katsudan. Izuku didn't look up immediately. He was sketching furiously. Thanks, Mom. Just a second. Inko stepped closer, curious. She expected to see a drawing of Kamiri Woods or Death Arms. Instead, she saw a detailed anatomical sketch of a human leg. The drawing was dissected to show the femoral artery, the quadriceps tendon, and the knee joint. Red ink had been used to circle specific points. Next to the knee, in Izuku's neat handwriting, were the notes. Target A. Patella. Force required to shatter, approximate 4,000 newtons. Result, immediate immobilization. Target B, peroneal nerve. Strike with knuckle protrusion. Result, foot drop, loss of balance. Efficient. Inko felt a chill run down her spine. Izuku, what is that? Izuku looked up. His eyes were large and green, but the innocence was dimmed. There was a dull, analytical flatness to them now. Oh, Master Yujiro was explaining why kick-based quirks often leave the user open. He told me to study the structural weak points of the leg. But why the red circles? Those are the break points, Izuku said matter-of-factly, tapping the paper. If you kick here, the leg snaps backward. If you kick here, the muscle tears off the bone. It helps to know where to hit so you don't waste energy. Waste energy? Inko whispered. Quirks are flashy, Izuku explained, turning back to his drawing. But everyone has knees. Everyone has a throat. Master says that if you know how a machine is built, you know how to take it apart. It doesn't matter if a villain can breathe fire if I crush his windpipe before he inhales. He picked up his pencil and drew a line through the throat of the diagram. Inko backed away slowly. She went into the kitchen and gripped the counter, trying to steady her breathing. She had agreed to this to save his life, to give him a future. But she was watching her sweet, empathetic boy turn into a surgeon of violence. Later that week, Yujiro took Izuku to a junkyard. Quirks often provide durability, Yujiro lectured, holding a steel pipe. Skin hardening. Shock absorption. Scales. But physics is absolute. He handed the pipe to Izuku. Hit the tire, Yujiro commanded, pointing to a massive tractor tire standing upright. Izuku swung the pipe with all his might. Thwack. The pipe bounced off the rubber. The vibration stung his hands. Useless, Yujiro scoffed. You are hitting the surface. You are fighting the rubber. You must hit through the object. Yujiro took the pipe. He didn't swing hard. He snapped his wrist, a motion that looked like a whip cracking. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot. The pipe didn't bounce. It sank into the thick rubber, tearing it open. Fluidity, Yujiro said. Hardness is brittle. Softness is unbreakable. When you strike, you must imagine your fist is water traveling through a hose. Upon impact, the water becomes ice. Transfer the kinetic energy past the point of contact. Internal damage, Izuku muttered, nodding. He picked up another pipe. Imagine the organs, Yujiro continued. The liver. The spleen. The brain rattling in the skull. A villain with steel skin still has a soft brain. Shake the container, and the contents turn to mush. Izuku swung. He visualized the force traveling through the rubber, vibrating the air inside the tire. Thud. Better. But not good enough. Again, Yujiro commanded. Do it until your hands bleed. Then do it until the bone shows. Izuku swung again. And again. And again. He stopped thinking about saving people. He stopped thinking about plus ultra. He thought about kinetic chains, torque, and the fragility of matter. By age 10, Izuku no longer saw people as people. He saw them as collections of levers, pulleys, and fluid sacs. He saw walking biology textbooks. And he knew exactly how to close the book. 3. The Wolf Among Sheep, age 12. Middle school is a jungle. The hierarchy is established early. The loud eat the quiet. The strong eat the weak. At Aldera Junior High, Katsuki Bakugo was the lion. He was loud, explosive, and talented. His quirk was a weapon of mass destruction, and his ego matched it. He walked the halls like a king, flanked by his lackeys. But there was a ghost in the halls. A ghost named Deku. For years, Bakugo had bullied Izuku. He had burned him, shoved him, mocked him. But somewhere around the second year of middle school, things changed. It was subtle at first. Izuku stopped flinching. It was lunchtime. Bakugo and his crew were cornering a first-year student, demanding money. It was standard bully behavior. Izuku walked past them, carrying a tray of food. He was reading a book on advanced physiology. Deku! Bakugo barked, stepping in Izuku's path. Walk around, you quirkless pebble. You're blocking my view. Usually, Izuku would stammer an apology and scurry away. This time, Izuku stopped. He didn't look up from his book. He stood perfectly still. Move, Bakugo growled, his palm crackling with nitroglycerin. Izuku slowly lowered the book. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo froze. There was something wrong with Izuku's eyes. They were dead. Not sad dead. Like the eyes of a shark that had just crested the water. They were devoid of fear, devoid of anger. They were simply observing. Kaken, Izuku said softly. His voice was deeper than it used to be. You have a bad habit of telegraphing your right hook. You drop your shoulder 3 centimeters before you swing. Against the grappler, that arm would be broken in 2 places before you sparked. Bakugo blinked, confused. Ha! What the hell are you babbling about, nerd? Just an observation, Izuku said. He stepped forward. Bakugo's instincts, honed by years of combat training, screamed at him. Danger! 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 It made no sense. Deku was quirkless. Deku was a twig. But as Izuku stepped closer, Bakugo felt a phantom pressure on his chest. It was like the air around Izuku was heavier, denser. The aura of someone who has spent a decade bathing in violence. Bakugo involuntarily took a step back. The hallway went silent. The lackeys stared. Bakugo had never backed down from anyone. Did you just step back? One of the lackeys whispered. Bakugo's face turned red with humiliation. I didn't step back. I slipped. He lunged at Izuku, hand raised for an explosion. Die. Izuku didn't dodge. He didn't block. He simply shifted his weight. As Bakugo's hand came down, Izuku stepped inside the guard. It was a movement so subtle it looked like he phased through the attack. Izuku's shoulder brushed against Bakugo's chest. It was a technique Yujiro called the cockroach dash, instant acceleration from 0 to max speed using the relaxation of muscles rather than tension. Izuku whispered in Bakugo's ear as he passed. Your carotid artery is exposed. Then he was gone. Izuku kept walking down the hall, opening his book again. Bakugo stood there, his hand frozen in midair. He was sweating. Cold, clammy sweat. He clutched his neck instinctively. For a split second, he had felt it. He had felt the sensation of his throat being ripped out. What the hell is he? Bakugo muttered, his hands trembling. From that day on, the bullying stopped. Not because they became friends, but because the other students realized that Izuku Midoriya was not a prey animal anymore. He was something else, something that was merely tolerating them. In the locker room during PE, the students noticed other things. Izuku never changed with the others. He always waited until everyone left, or changed in a stall. But one day, a student named Tsubasa forgot his shoes and ran back in. He saw Izuku shirtless. Tsubasa froze. Izuku's back was a tapestry of scars. Bite marks from wild animals. Slash marks from knives. Burn marks. But underneath the scars was a musculature that didn't belong on a 12-year-old. It was dense, corded, and terrifyingly defined. The muscles twisted and coiled like snakes under his skin. Izuku turned, sensing the gaze. He pulled his shirt on quickly. Don't stare, Izuku said quietly. Tsubasa ran out of the room and threw up. 4. The philosophy of the ogre. Why does one fight? This was the question Yujiro posed to Izuku on his 13th birthday. They were not having cake. They were sitting on the edge of a skyscraper in Tokyo, legs dangling over the city lights. To save people, Izuku answered automatically. It was the answer he had clung to since he was 4. The answer that kept him sane. Yujiro took a swig from his flask and passed it to the 13-year-old. Izuku took a sip. It burned like acid, but he didn't cough. Wrong, Yujiro said. That is why All Might fights. That is why the police fight. They fight to preserve the status quo. They fight to maintain order. Yujiro gestured to the millions of people below. Look at them. Weak. Soft. They rely on laws, on walls, on heroes to keep them safe. They have outsourced their survival. They are domesticated pets. Is that wrong? Izuku asked. People deserve to live in peace. Peace is an illusion, Yujiro scoffed. Nature is violence. Gravity is violence. Disease is violence. The only truth is strength. The power to impose your will upon the world. He looked at Izuku. The boy had grown. He was no longer the crying child. He was a weapon forged in hell. His hands were rough. His eyes were sharp. But there was still a conflict in him. You want to use my power to play their game, Yujiro said. You want to be a hero. But you must understand, Izuku, the power I have given you is not a shield. It is a sword. You cannot save everyone. Sometimes, to save the sheep, you must brutally dismember the wolf. Can you do that? Can you break a man's spine and smile at the camera? Izuku looked at his hands. I don't want to kill. I didn't say kill, Yujiro grinned. I said break. There are fates worse than death. To render a villain powerless. To make him realize that no matter what quirk he has, he is nothing but meat. That is true victory. Izuku looked down at the city. He thought about Bakugo. He thought about the villains on the news. All Might saves their hearts, Izuku murmured. You crush their spirits. Precisely. I want to do both, Izuku said, looking Yujiro in the eye. I want to be strong enough that villains are terrified to move, so I never have to kill them. I want to be the ultimate deterrent. Yujiro stared at the boy. Then he laughed. Greedy brat. You want the fear of the ogre, and the love of the angel. It's contradictory. It's madness. Yujiro stood up, the wind whipping his red hair. But madness is the only thing that interests me. You have 1 year left, Izuku. 1 year until high school. Until UA. Yujiro's face darkened. This final year, we stop holding back. No more drills. No more foraging. For the next year, I will try to break you. If you survive, you graduate. If you don't, well, it was a fun experiment. The final exam, age 14. The location was the Hanma compound, a private estate hidden deep in the mountains, far from civilization. It was less a house and more a fortress. Izuku stood in the center of the subterranean dojo. The floor was reinforced concrete. The walls were lined with steel. He was 14. He wore simple black shorts. He was barefoot. His body was a masterpiece of kinetic potential. He wasn't bulky like a bodybuilder. He was compact, dense, every muscle fiber honed for explosive power. He stood with a relaxed posture, arms hanging loose, the signature stance of the Hanma style. Opposite him stood Yujiro Hanma. The ogre removed his shirt. His back rippled, the muscles forming the grotesque, terrifying face of a demon. The demon back. This is it, Yujiro said. The air in the room became heavy, hard to breathe. The killing intent was palpable. It felt like needles pricking Izuku's skin. Come at me with the intent to kill. If you hold back, I will rip your arm off. Izuku took a breath. He closed his eyes for a second. He thought about the 10 years. The broken bones. The nights shivering in the cold. The ridicule at school. The fear in his mother's eyes. He opened his eyes. They were glowing with green fire. Yes, master. Izuku vanished. It wasn't teleportation. It was pure speed. He launched himself off the concrete, shattering the floor beneath his toes. He appeared in front of Yujiro instantly, delivering a high kick aimed at the temple. Yujiro didn't block. He leaned his head back 2 centimeters. The wind from the kick cut a shallow gash in the wall 10 meters away. Slow, Yujiro taunted. Izuku didn't stop. He spun in midair, using the momentum to drive a heel into Yujiro's collarbone. Yujiro caught the heel with one hand. Weak. Yujiro slammed Izuku into the floor. The concrete cracked like a spiderweb. Izuku coughed blood, the air driven from his lungs. But he didn't stay down. As he bounced off the floor, Izuku twisted, grabbing Yujiro's wrist. He used the leverage to swing himself up, wrapping his legs around Yujiro's neck in a triangle choke. Yujiro raised an eyebrow. Grappling? Izuku squeezed. His thighs were like hydraulic presses. He applied thousands of pounds of pressure, aiming to cut off the blood flow to the brain. Yujiro simply flexed his neck muscles. The sheer expansion of his traps forced Izuku's legs apart. Technique is good, Yujiro critiqued casually, ignoring the boy trying to strangle him. But weight classes exist for a reason. Yujiro reached up, grabbed Izuku by the face, and peeled him off. He threw Izuku across the room. Izuku smashed into the steel wall, leaving a dent. He slid down, gasping. His ribs were definitely cracked. His vision swam. Is that it? Yujiro walked toward him slowly. Is that the result of 10 years? You are still a rabbit. A rabbit that knows karate is still a rabbit. Izuku wiped the blood from his mouth. He stood up, his legs shaking. Think, Izuku told himself. I can't beat him with strength. I can't beat him with speed. I need to bypass his defense. He remembered the lessons. The body is water. The skin is a container. Yujiro wound up for a punch. A punch that would surely kill a normal man. Izuku didn't dodge. He relaxed. He went completely limp. Shaoli. The defensive art of negating damage by moving with the force. Yujiro's fist connected with Izuku's stomach. But instead of resisting, Izuku's body folded around the fist, spinning with the impact like a feather caught in a gale. He was sent flying, spinning through the air, but the damage was minimized. He landed on his feet, skidding to a halt. Yujiro paused. He looked at his fist. He looked at the boy. Defensive Shaori, Yujiro grunted. Not bad. You learned to abandon your pride to survive. I'm not done, Izuku wheezed. He assumed a stance. It wasn't a karate stance. It wasn't boxing. It was something feral. He lowered his center of gravity, hands clawed. He rushed again. But this time, just before impact, Izuku slapped his hands together. A massive clap that created a sonic boom, disorienting the senses. In that split second of auditory overload, Izuku struck. He didn't punch. He used his fingers like spears. Nookite. He drove his fingers toward Yujiro's solar plexus, twisting his hand upon impact to drill through the muscle. Thud. His fingers sank in about an inch before hitting the abdominal wall of the ogre, which was harder than diamond. Izuku's fingers broke. Snap. But Yujiro flinched. For a microsecond, the ogre grimaced. Yujiro backhanded Izuku, sending him tumbling across the room. Izuku lay on the floor, clutching his broken hand, laughing. He was laughing through the pain. I made you blink, Izuku choked out, grinning manically. Yujiro touched his chest. There was a small red mark. He looked at the boy. The boy who was broken, bleeding, but smiling. Yujiro's expression shifted. The demon face on his back relaxed. He let out a low chuckle, which grew into a roar of laughter. Ha ha! You arrogant little shit! Yujiro walked over to Izuku. He didn't kick him. He reached down and hoisted the boy up by the back of his shirt. You broke your hand on my abs. But yes, you touched me. You bypassed the instinctual guard. Yujiro dropped him. Get out. Izuku blinked, lying on the cold concrete. What? Training is over, Yujiro said, turning his back and walking away. I have taught you how to break the body. I have taught you how to weaponize fear. I have taught you that the world is soft. He stopped at the door. You are 14. The UA entrance exam is in 10 months. Go. Go play hero. Put on your costume. Save the cats. Fight the villains. Yujiro glanced back over his shoulder. His eyes were glowing red. But remember, Izuku. You are a Hanma now. You can wear the mask of a hero, but underneath, you are a monster. And one day, that mask will crack. Where are you going? Izuku asked, sitting up. I'm bored, Yujiro said. I'm going to America to see if their military has developed anything interesting. Don't die, brat. If you die, I'll be annoyed. With that, the strongest creature on Earth walked out of the room, leaving Izuku alone in the silence. 6. The Return. Izuku walked home. It took him 3 days to trek back to Musudafu. When he arrived at the apartment, it was late. He unlocked the door. Inko was in the kitchen. She looked older. The stress of the last decade had given her gray hairs. She heard the door and froze. Izuku stepped into the light. He was taller than her now. His clothes were tattered. He had a cast on his hand that he had fashioned himself out of splints and tape. Izuku? She whispered. I'm back, Mom, Izuku said. His voice was tired. Inko rushed to him. She hesitated for a moment, seeing the scars, seeing the dangerous aura that clung to him. But then, she saw his eyes. They were tired and hard, but they were still Izuku's eyes. She hugged him. It was like hugging a statue. He was solid rock. Is it over? She asked into his chest. Izuku hugged her back with his good arm, careful not to crush her. He realized how fragile she was. How fragile everyone was. Yeah, Izuku said softly. He's gone. He looked at the All Might poster on the wall. It looked different now. It didn't look like a god anymore. It looked like a man. A strong man, but just a man. Mom, Izuku said. Yes, honey? I'm going to UA. Inko pulled back and looked at him. She saw the confidence. Not the fake confidence of a child dreaming, but the absolute certainty of a predator who knows he is the top of the food chain. I know, she said, wiping a tear. Just, please try not to hurt anyone too badly. Izuku smiled. It was a small, dry smile. I'll try. 7. Epilogue. The Predator in Uniform. 10 months later. Aldera Junior High. It was the day of the career path forms. The teacher stood at the front of the class. I assume you all want to be heroes. The teacher shouted, throwing the papers in the air. The class cheered, displaying their quirks. Stones levitated, eyes glowed, fingers elongated. Hey, teach! Bakugo yelled, feet on his desk. Don't lump me in with these extras. I'm going to UA, the class murmured in awe. Oh, right, the teacher said, checking his list. Bakugo is aiming for UA. And oh? Midoriya is too? Silence. Absolute silence. Usually, the class would laugh. Deku? The quirkless kid? But nobody laughed. They turned slowly to look at the back of the room. Izuku was sitting there. He was scribbling in a notebook. He wore the standard black uniform, but it fit poorly. His shoulders were too broad. His neck was too thick. The fabric strained against his arms. He didn't look up. The scratching of his pencil was the only sound in the room. Midoriya? Bakugo said. His voice wasn't mocking. It was tight. You're really doing it? Izuku stopped writing. He looked up. His green eyes scanned the room, landing on Bakugo. Yes, Izuku said calmly. Why? Is there a problem? Bakugo swallowed. He remembered the feeling in the hallway. The exposed carotid. No, Bakugo grunted, looking away. No problem. The class remained silent. They didn't know about Yujiro. They didn't know about the mountains or the bullets. But their instincts told them one thing. Do not poke the bear. Izuku went back to writing. He wasn't writing about hero costumes. He was writing a schedule. Entrance exam in 2 weeks. Target, robots. Strategy, dismantle. The rabbit was gone. The ogre's successor was ready to eat the world. The architecture of boredom. The final bell of the school day rang, a shrill, mechanical sound that signaled freedom for hundreds of students at Aldera Junior High. For Izuku Midoriya, however, it signaled only a transition from one form of boredom to another. School was easy. Academically, he was top of the class, not because he was a genius, but because Yujiro Hanma had forced him to memorize complex anatomical charts, physics equations for ballistic trajectories, and chemical compositions of poisons before he was 10. Compared to calculating the shear force required to shear a human femur without shattering it, high school algebra was a joke. Izuku packed his bag slowly. His movements were fluid, devoid of wasted energy. Oh, Deku. The voice was rough, sounding like gravel in a blender. Katsuki Bakugo stood by Izuku's desk, his hands in his pockets, his posture slouching with practiced arrogance. Behind him, his 2 lackeys hovered, though they stood further back than they used to. They had learned the hard way that standing too close to Midoriya felt like standing near a high-voltage fence. Izuku didn't look up immediately. He zipped his bag. Katsuki? He had stopped calling him Kakin years ago. Nicknames implied affection. Nicknames implied a bond. There was no bond here, only the recognition of 2 predators sharing a territory. One was a loud, explosive lion. The other was a silent, subterranean monster. Don't think you're hot stuff just because you didn't flinch yesterday, Bakugo spat, kicking the leg of Izuku's desk. I don't know what kind of steroids you've been taking, or what kind of underground fight club you've been sneaking into, but UA is different. They test for quirks. Real power. Not just whatever the hell you have. Izuku finally looked up. His green eyes were dull, half-lidded. It was the look Yujiro often wore when watching television, a profound, existential lack of interest. Are you done? Izuku asked. Bakugo's eye twitched. Sparks popped on his palms. You looking down on me? I'm not looking down on you, Izuku said, standing up. He was slightly taller than Bakugo now, his frame thicker, denser. I'm looking through you. Your stance is open. Your breathing is irregular. You're angry, which means your heart rate is elevated. In a real fight, you'd burn out in 3 minutes. He slung his yellow backpack over one shoulder, a relic of his childhood that looked comically small against his massive back muscles. UA is just a school, Katsuki. It's a building. It doesn't grant power. It measures it. Izuku walked past him. Bakugo whirled around, hand raised, an explosion prepped. Don't walk away from me. Izuku stopped. He didn't turn around. He simply flared his latissimus dorsi muscles slightly, the fabric of his uniform straining with a terrifying ripping sound. The killing intent, a cold, heavy pressure like the bottom of the ocean, flooded the classroom. The lackeys gasped, clutching their chests. Bakugo froze, the explosion dying in his palm. His survival instinct, the lizard part of his brain, screamed run. Go home, Katsuki, Izuku whispered. Before I decide to consider this a sparring match. Izuku walked out of the classroom, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like gravity had doubled. 2. The nature of fluids. The walk home was sweltering. The sun beat down on the asphalt, creating heat hazes that shimmered in the distance. Izuku walked through the shopping district, his mind drifting. He missed the mountains. He missed the clean, cold air of Hokkaido. He missed the simplicity of survival. Here, in the city, everything was loud. Billboards screamed advertisements. Heroes gave interviews on giant screens. It was a carnival of vanity. I am here! All Might's voice boomed from a television in an electronics store window. Izuku stopped to watch for a moment. All Might was saving a bus from falling off a bridge. The crowd cheered. The hero laughed, a boisterous, hearty sound. Heroes are slaves to the weak. Yujiro's voice echoed in Izuku's memory. They perform for applause. Izuku looked at the screen. Is it a performance? He muttered to himself. Or is it a burden? He turned into an underpass, seeking shade. The tunnel was cool, damp, and smelled of mold. It was quiet. Squelch. The sound came from the manhole cover behind him. Izuku didn't turn around. He stopped walking. His ears, honed by years of hunting in dense forests, picked up the viscosity of the sound. Wet. Heavy. Sliding. A medium-sized cloak of invisibility. A gurgling voice hissed. Izuku tilted his head. Villain. The manhole cover exploded upward. A mass of dark green sludge erupted from the sewers, coalescing into a towering, semi-liquid form with manic, bulging eyes. You'll make a perfect skin suit, kid! The sludge villain roared, lunging forward. Don't struggle. It'll only hurt for a minute. Most victims would scream. Most would run. Izuku simply sighed. As the sludge wave crashed down to engulf him, Izuku pivoted on his left heel. He dropped his center of gravity, Hanma style, defensive shouri. The sludge hit him, but instead of engulfing a solid object, it hit a body that was completely relaxed. Izuku moved with the force of the sludge, spinning inside the wave like a leaf in a whirlpool. He allowed the villain to wrap around him, but he kept his own structural integrity perfect. Gotcha! The villain laughed, tightening his grip to force himself down the boy's throat. Now let me in. You smell like raw sewage, Izuku said. His voice wasn't muffled. He was controlling his diaphragm perfectly to speak despite the constriction. What? The villain paused. You can speak? Fluid mechanics, Izuku lectured calmly, even as slime pressed against his face. A liquid cannot compress a solid if the solid is denser than the pressure being applied. My neck muscles are currently exerting more outward force than you are exerting inward. Izuku flexed. It wasn't a normal flex. It was an explosive expansion of muscle mass. His trapezius muscles flared, his neck thickened, and his chest expanded. Rip. The sludge covering his upper body was forced apart simply by the sudden change in volume. The villain shrieked. What are you? I'm in a bad mood, Izuku said. He freed his right arm. He didn't punch. You can't punch water. Yujiro had taught him that at the waterfall. To hurt water you must shock it. Izuku held his hand flat, fingers together. He whipped his arm forward, his limb moving like a wet towel snapping. Benda, the whip strike. His hand slapped the surface of the sludge. It wasn't a hard impact. It was a vibrational transfer. The shockwave traveled through the villain's liquid body, rippling through every molecule. Since liquids are incompressible, the shockwave had nowhere to go but to tear the villain apart from the inside. Grah! The villain screamed as his liquid form vibrated violently, losing cohesion. His eyes rolled back. The pain was excruciating, like every nerve ending in his gelatinous body was being electrocuted. The sludge exploded outward, splattering against the tunnel walls. The villain was reduced to puddles, groaning in agony. Izuku shook the slime off his hand. Disgusting. Suddenly, the manhole cover clattered again. Have no fear! For I am. All Might burst from the sewer, striking a pose. He looked majestic, terrified, and exhausted all at once. He blinked, looking around the tunnel. He saw the walls painted with green slime. He saw the villain, effectively unconscious, puddling on the floor. And he saw a teenager in a middle school uniform, wiping his hand with a handkerchief, looking bored. I am late? All Might finished, confused. Izuku looked at the number one hero. The giant blonde man was imposing, radiating a charisma that was almost blinding. But Izuku's eyes didn't see the charisma. He saw the slight tremor in the hero's left leg. He saw the way his smile didn't quite reach the eyes, a mask of pain. He's injured, Izuku analyzed instantly. Respiratory system compromised. Missing lung? No, stomach. His center of gravity favors his right side. You missed the party, Izuku said dryly. He pointed to the puddle. He's all yours. I suggest scooping him into bottles. He's viscous. All Might stared at the boy. Young man, did you do this? Without a quirk? I punched him, Izuku lied. He didn't feel like explaining vibrational physics to a man wearing spandex. Can I go? I have homework. All Might was stunned. Usually, fans swarmed him. This kid looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Ah well. Thank you for your bravery. I will take this villain into custody. All Might began frantically scooping the sludge into empty soda bottles he had in his pockets. Izuku watched him for a moment. The symbol of peace, he thought. Picking up trash in a tunnel. You're bleeding, Izuku noted, pointing to the corner of All Might's mouth. All Might flinched, wiping the blood away quickly. Just old war wounds. Nothing to worry about. Ha ha ha, right, Izuku said. He turned and walked away. Try not to strain yourself, old man. All Might watched him go. A shiver ran down his spine. It wasn't the shiver of fear, but of recognition. That boy, he walked like a warrior. A warrior who had seen too much war and not enough peace. 3. The bystander effect. Izuku didn't go straight home. He stopped at a bookstore to browse medical journals. He lost track of time. By the time he stepped back out onto the street, the sky was turning a bruised purple. Then, he heard the explosion. It was a familiar sound. The sharp crackle boom of nitroglycerin. Izuku sighed. Katsuki? He followed the smoke. It led him to the Tatooine shopping district. A crowd had gathered. Police tape was up. Heroes were standing around, looking useless. Izuku pushed through the crowd. He didn't say excuse me. He just walked, and people instinctively moved out of his way, parting like the Red Sea before a shark. He reached the front of the line and saw the chaos. The sludge villain had escaped. And he had a new hostage. Die! 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 Bakugo was screaming, firing explosions wildly. But the explosions were useless. They just warmed up the sludge, making the villain more elastic. The villain had engulfed Bakugo's lower half and was forcing himself into Bakugo's mouth and nose. What a quirk! The villain gloated. With this body, I'll be unstoppable. Thanks for the upgrade, kid! The heroes, Death Arms, Kamui Woods, Empty Lady, were standing back. I can't get close. Death Arms shouted. My punches just slide off. I need space. Empty Lady complained. I can't grow here. My wood is weak against fire. Kamui Wood stated. Izuku stood by the police tape, watching. His face was a mask of indifference. Pathetic, he thought. They are analyzing the matchup like it's a video game. Type advantage. Environment. Just kill him. He looked at the villain. The eyes were the weak point. Or the fluid sac where he kept his actual consciousness. Then, he looked at Bakugo. Bakugo's eyes met his. For the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo wasn't looking at Izuku with anger or arrogance. He was looking at him with terror, and a plea. Help me. Izuku felt a twitch in his chest. It wasn't the heroic urge to save. It was something more primal. It was the irritation of a master seeing his potential rival reduced to prey. Yujiro wouldn't help, Izuku thought. Yujiro would watch him die and call it natural selection, but Izuku wasn't Yujiro. He was the ogre's successor, yes. But he was also Inko Midoriya's son. Move, Izuku said. He stepped under the police tape. Hey! Kid! Get back! Death Arms yelled, reaching out to grab him. It's dangerous. Izuku swatted Death Arms' hand away. He didn't look at the hero. You're in the way. If you aren't going to fight, go stand in the back with the civilians. What? Death Arms bristled. Izuku ignored him. He walked toward the fire. The heat was intense. The asphalt was melting. Izuku didn't flinch. His skin had been toughened by freezing winters and boiling springs. This was just a warm breeze. The sludge villain saw him. You! The brat from the tunnel. You're persistent, Izuku said, his voice cutting through the roar of the flames. And you're ruining my afternoon. I'll kill you this time. The villain lashed out with a tendril of sludge, moving faster than before. Izuku didn't run. He walked. As the tendril snapped toward his head, Izuku tilted his neck. The sludge was past his ear. He kept walking. Another tendril. Izuku sidestepped. Minimal movement. Efficient. Why won't you die? The villain screamed. Because your aim is trash, Izuku replied. He was 10 meters away. Bakugo watched him coming. Deku? What is he doing? He's going to get killed, Katsuki, Izuku said calmly. Close your mouth. Unless you want to taste sewage. Izuku stopped 5 feet from the villain. The heat was scorching now. Die. The villain expanded, trying to crush Izuku with a massive wave of body mass. Izuku took a breath. He assumed a stance. Feet wide, rooted to the ground. Arms loose. He recalled Yujiro's lesson on the beach. The ocean is heavy. But air is sharp. Izuku raised his right leg. He chambered a kick. Vacuum cut. He snapped his leg forward in a roundhouse kick. He didn't touch the villain. He kicked the air in front of the villain. The sheer velocity of the kick, breaking the sound barrier for a fraction of a second, created a localized vacuum blade. A crescent of compressed air fired from his shin. Boom! The air pressure slammed into the sludge villain. It didn't just push him, it atomized the cohesion of the fluid. A massive hole was blasted through the center of the villain's torso. The wind pressure blew the fires out in a 10-meter radius. The villain's hold on Bakugo shattered. The sludge lost its form, splashing harmlessly onto the pavement. Bakugo fell forward, coughing and retching. Izuku stood there, legs still raised, the smoke clearing around him. He lowered his legs slowly. The street was silent. The heroes were jaw-dropped. The civilians were stunned. Izuku walked over to Bakugo. He looked down at the boy who had tormented him for a decade. You look like a wet dog, Katsuki, Izuku said. Bakugo looked up, eyes wide, hacking up slime. You. Next time, Izuku said, turning around, learn to dodge. 4. The wrath of the sheepdogs. The aftermath was predictable. The heroes swarmed. But they didn't swarm Izuku to praise him. They swarmed him to scold him. Are you insane? Kamui Wood shouted, pointing a wooden finger in Izuku's face. You could have been killed. That was reckless. You don't have a license. You interfered with official hero business. Death Arms added, puffing out his chest. Leave this to the professionals. Meanwhile, they were praising Bakugo. Amazing quirk, kid. You held out so long. You're a natural. Izuku stood there, listening to the heroes berate him. He felt a vain throb in his temple. This is society, he thought. They praise the victim for having a flashy power, and they scold the victor for breaking the rules. Are you finished? Izuku interrupted Kamui Woods. The hero paused. Excuse me? Izuku stepped closer. He was shorter than the wood hero, but he felt larger. I solved the problem in 3 seconds, Izuku said quietly. You stood there for 10 minutes watching a teenager suffocate because you were worried about your matchups. You aren't heroes. You're civil servants with costumes. You little. Death Arms reached for him. Izuku grabbed Death Arms' wrist. He didn't squeeze hard, just enough to grind the radius and ulna bones together. Death Arms yelped, dropping to one knee. Don't touch me, Izuku said coldly. I'm leaving. He released the hero and walked away. The crowd parted again, but this time, there was fear in their eyes. They whispered, Who is that kid? Is he a villain? Izuku ignored them. He ignored Bakugo screaming his name. He just wanted to go home and wash the smell of ozone and incompetence off his skin. The shadow and the light, the sun had set. Izuku was walking through a quiet residential neighborhood. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a hollow emptiness. Is this it? He wondered. Is this what I trained for? To save ungrateful people and get yelled at by weaklings? He felt Yujiro's laughter in the back of his mind. I told you, boy. They are sheep. I am here. Izuku stopped. All Might slid out from around a corner, striking a pose. But something was wrong. Smoke exploded from his body. Poof! The giant muscle-bound god vanished. In his place stood a skeletal, emaciated man with sunken eyes and hair that looked like drooping rabbit ears. He coughed, blood spurting from his mouth. Izuku blinked. He didn't scream. He analyzed. Sudden mass reduction. Conservation of energy violation? No. The muscle form is a transformation. This is his true state. You. Izuku pointed. You're the skeleton from the tunnel. All Might wiped the blood away. I am All Might. This is my true form. He sat down on a guardrail, looking tired. Young man. I saw what you did back there. At the fire. Izuku crossed his arms. Are you going to lecture me too? Tell me I was reckless? No, All Might said. He looked at Izuku with intense blue eyes, eyes that held a storm of emotion. I'm going to tell you that you were terrifying. Izuku paused. Terrifying? Yes, All Might said. You walked into that fire not like a hero, but like an executioner. You dismantled that villain with the efficiency of a machine. You didn't hesitate. You didn't show fear. Fear is a waste of calories. Izuku recited Yujiro's lesson. Perhaps, All Might said. But fear is also what makes us human. It's what makes us careful with the lives of others. All Might stood up. He walked over to Izuku. I have been looking for a successor, All Might confessed. My power, it is fading. My body is breaking down. I need someone to take the torch. He looked at Izuku's hands, scarred, calloused, deadly. When I saw you in that alley, I saw power. Great power. Power that doesn't need a quirk. You have trained yourself to the peak of human conditioning, haven't you? I trained to survive, Izuku said. But there is a darkness in you, young Midoriya, All Might said softly. I saw it in your eyes when you looked at the heroes. You despise them. You despise weakness. Izuku looked away. Weakness gets people killed. Strength without a heart is just violence, All Might countered. And violence is lonely. The words struck Izuku. Lonely. He thought of Yujiro. The ogre sitting on a mountain, drinking alone. The man who had everything but had nothing. No friends. No equals. Only prey. Why are you telling me this? Izuku asked. Because, All Might said, placing a hand on his chest. I want to give you my power. I want to give you one for all. Izuku frowned. You want to give me a quirk? I don't need it. I'm already strong. I know you are, All Might smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. That is why I am asking. If I give this power to someone weak, they might break. If I give it to someone arrogant, they might become a tyrant. All Might leaned in. But you know the cost of strength. You have paid for it in blood. I want you to take my power, not to make you stronger, but to give your strength a purpose. A purpose? To become the symbol of peace, All Might said. To take that terrifying power of yours and use it to make people smile, not just to make villains tremble. To be the pillar that holds up the sky so that others don't have to be strong. Izuku stared at the skeletal man. Yujiro offered him the world. Yujiro offered him the right to do whatever he wanted. To eat the weak. All Might was offering him a job. A burden. To carry the weak. Stay a rabbit and be eaten, or walk with the ogre and eat the world. But there was a third option. Become the wolf that guards the sheep. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. He imagined combining the techniques of the Hanma, the absolute destruction, with the raw, stockpiled power of One for All. It wouldn't just be strong. It would be godlike. If I take this power, Izuku said slowly, I won't use it like you. I won't be a smiling Boy Scout. I don't expect you to be me, All Might said. I expect you to be you. I was raised by a monster, Izuku warned. My instincts are to break things, then break the cycle of fear, All Might challenged. Izuku looked up. The streetlights flickered on. Fine, Izuku said. A grin spread across his face, sharp, feral, but with a hint of hope. I'll take it. But don't blame me if the world isn't ready for what I become, All Might laughed. It was a weak, wheezing laugh, but it was happy. I think the world has been waiting for you, young Midoriya. 6. The ingestion. Eat this. Izuku stared at the long strand of blonde hair in All Might's hand. They were standing at the beach park, or what used to be a trash heap. Izuku hadn't needed to clean it. The municipality had done it years ago. It was a clean, moonlit stretch of sand. You're joking, Izuku said. No, All Might said seriously. To inherit the power, you must ingest some of my DNA. This is the fastest way. Izuku looked at the hair. He looked at All Might. I have eaten raw snake, Izuku muttered. I have eaten tree bark. I have eaten bear meat that was still warm. But this is weird. Just eat it. All Might urged. Izuku sighed. He took the hair. He didn't hesitate. He swallowed it dry. He waited. Nothing happened, Izuku said. It takes time to digest, All Might explained. Usually a few hours. By the time of the entrance exam, you should feel it. The exam is in 10 months, Izuku said. Yes. And we shall use that time to train your body to handle the... All Might paused, looking at Izuku's physique. The shirt stretched tight over pectoral muscles that looked like armor plates. Ah. Well, actually, your body is probably fine. All Might poked Izuku's arm. It was like poking a tree trunk. My goodness, All Might mumbled. What did you do? Push-ups? I fought a bear, Izuku said. A bear? It was a small bear, Izuku clarified modestly. An Asian black bear. About 150 kilograms. All Might sweated nervously. Right. Well, since your body is prepared, we will focus on control. One for All is volatile. If you use 100% instantly, even with your muscles, you might explode. I know how to limit output, Izuku said. Yujiro taught me to dial back my strength so I don't accidentally kill sparring partners. It's just muscle control, Yujiro. All Might tested the name. This teacher of yours. Who is he? Izuku looked out at the ocean. The dark water reflected the moon. He's the ogre, Izuku said. And compared to him, you and I are just children playing in a sandbox. All Might fell silent. He sensed a looming shadow over this boy's past. A shadow that he would have to help chase away. 7. The 10 months of restraint. The next 10 months were strange for All Might. Usually, a mentor has to push the student. Run faster. Lift heavier. Go beyond. With Izuku, All Might spent 10 months yelling, stop. Too hard. You'll break the machine. They met at the beach on weekends. Not for physical training, but for Heroics 101. All Might tried to teach Izuku how to smile. How to wave. How to reassure civilians. It went poorly. Smile. All Might shouted. Izuku smiled. No! All Might recoiled in horror. That looks like you're about to eat a baby. Less teeth. More eyes. This is my natural smile, Izuku argued. It's terrifying. Try to think of something happy. Puppies. Ice cream. Izuku thought about the time he successfully dislocated a wolf's jaw. He smiled. Better. All Might lied. They also worked on One for All. The power settled into Izuku differently than it had for All Might. For All Might, it was a torch. For Izuku, it was like pouring gasoline into a nuclear reactor. The first time Izuku activated it, the sand around him turned to glass from the sheer friction of his sudden movement. It pulses, Izuku noted, looking at the glowing red veins appearing on his skin. It synchronizes with my heart rate. If I use the endorphin release technique, he breathed in, triggering his brain to flood his body with natural painkillers and adrenaline. The OFA lightning turned from yellow to a violent, crackling green. Boom! He threw a punch at the air. The wind pressure cleared the clouds above the beach for 3 miles. All Might held onto a railing to keep from blowing away. 5%, Izuku noted. I used about 5%. All Might looked pale. 5%, did that? My base strength acts as a multiplier, Izuku theorized. One for All adds power to power. It's exponential. He clenched his fist. The power was intoxicating. It was dangerous. I need to be careful, Izuku whispered. If I hit a human with this, they won't just break. They'll liquefy. Yes, All Might agreed solemnly. You must be the gentle giant, Midoriya. The sword in the velvet sheath. 8. The morning of the exam. 10 months passed in a blur. The day of the UA entrance exam arrived. The sky was blue. The cherry blossoms were falling. Izuku stood at the gates of UA High School. He wore the standard tracksuit, but he had modified it, cutting off the sleeves to allow for range of motion, and because his biceps tore the seams, he saw other students walking in. Some were nervous. Some were confident. He saw Bakugo. Bakugo glared at him, then looked away, muttering something. He looked humbled. The sludge incident had left a mark on his pride. Izuku walked toward the gate. He tripped on a loose paving stone. Instinct took over. He didn't flail. He didn't panic. He prepared to catch himself with a one-finger handstand, but before he hit the ground he stopped. He was floating. Whoa! Careful there. A girl with a round face and brown hair was touching his backpack. She smiled brightly. It's bad luck to fall on the first day, right? She chirped. I used my quirk to stop you. Sorry I didn't ask. Izuku looked at her. He felt weightless. It was a disorientation he despised. He hated not having contact with the ground. Ground meant leverage. Leverage meant power. Release me, Izuku said. It came out harsher than he intended. Oh. Sorry. She tapped her fingers together. Release. Izuku dropped. He landed silently, his knees bending slightly to absorb the impact. He looked at the girl. She was soft. Open. Vulnerable. A predator would eat her in seconds. Thanks, Izuku muttered, turning away. Good luck. She waved. Izuku walked into the auditorium. He sat down. Present Mike, the voice hero, was on stage screaming about "Hey everybody say HUI." Izuku put in earplugs. He took out a book on advanced robotics and weak points of mechatronic systems. Can you stop muttering? Bakugo hissed from the seat next to him. I'm not muttering, Izuku replied, reading. I'm calculating the tensile strength of the zero-pointer based on budget allocation rumors. You're a creep. And you're loud. The written exam was boring. Izuku finished it in 20 minutes. He spent the rest of the time sketching a new training regimen. Then came the practical. Izuku stood in front of the massive gates of Battle Center B. He was surrounded by other examinees. They were stretching, hyping themselves up. Izuku stood still. He closed his eyes. He visualized the ogre. He visualized the demon back. Don't use one for all, he told himself. Not yet. Save it. Let's see what the Hanma blood can do on its own. Start. Present Mike yelled from the tower. There are no countdowns in real battles. Go. 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 The other students hesitated. Izuku didn't. Cockroach dash. He blurred. A sonic boom cracked behind him, knocking over a boy with blue hair and glasses, Ida. By the time the other students started running, Izuku was already inside the city. A three-pointer robot, a massive machine of steel and treads, rolled around the corner. Target acquired. It fired a rubber bullet volley. Izuku bobbed and weaved. He moved like water. The bullets passed through the spaces where his body had been milliseconds before. He closed the distance. He didn't punch the armor. He jumped, landing on the robot's shoulder. He jammed his hands into the joint between the head and the torso. Grip strength, 200 kilograms. He ripped. Screech. The sound of tearing metal was agonizing. Izuku ripped the robot's head clean off its shoulders, wires sparking and snapping. He tossed the metal head aside like an empty soda can. 3 points, Izuku counted. He landed and kept running. He was a blur of destruction. He didn't use flashy energy blasts. He used efficiency. He kicked tank treads off their wheels. He punched through sensory lenses. He used robots as clubs to hit other robots. In the observation room, the teachers watched the screens. Good heavens, a hero named Snipe muttered. Who is that kid in Center B? He's fighting like a wild animal. No quirk usage registered, Midnight observed, licking her lips. Just pure, unadulterated physical dominance. It's exhilarating. Aizawa Shoda sat in the corner, his eyes narrowed. He watched Izuku dismantle a robot with a precise chop to the fuel line. He knows where to hit, Aizawa murmured. He's not fighting them. He's deconstructing them. Back on the field, Izuku was bored. 45 points. 50 points. 60 points. He stood atop a pile of scrap metal, panting slightly. Sweat glistened on his scars. This is too easy, he thought. Are these the obstacles of the elite? Then, the ground shook. Boom. 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 The zero-pointer. It rose above the buildings, blocking out the sun. It was the size of a skyscraper. The other examinees screamed and ran. Run away! Someone yelled. It's not worth any points. Izuku watched it. It was big. Big meant slow. He turned to leave. It was a waste of energy. Ouch. Help! A voice. Izuku stopped. He looked back. The girl, the gravity girl, was trapped under rubble in the path of the giant. Izuku sighed. Of course. The damsel in distress scenario. He looked at the robot. He looked at the girl. Yujiro would leave her. If she is weak enough to get caught, she deserves to be crushed, but All Might would save her. I am here! Izuku rolled his neck. Crack. Fine, he grumbled. Let's test the engine. He crouched. He didn't use the dash this time. He engaged the quirk. 1 for all, full cowl. 1%. Green lightning crackled around his body. The ground beneath his feet pulverized. He jumped. He didn't fly, he launched. He ascended like a surface-to-air missile. He passed the buildings. He reached the face of the zero-pointer. The robot's massive red eye focused on the tiny human. Izuku pulled his fist back. He channeled the Hanma logic, fluidity, rotation, torque, and infused it with the power of the eighth user. Smash? No. That wasn't his style. Ogre. Cannon. He punched. The impact was silent for a split second. Then the air shattered. The face of the zero-pointer didn't just dent. It evaporated. The force traveled through the robot, blowing out the back of its head in a cone of destruction that parted the clouds above the city. The sonic boom shattered every window in the mock city. The massive machine began to tip backward, headless. Izuku fell through the air. His arms smoked. His bones hurt, but they weren't broken. His density had saved him. He looked down at his fist. A bit much, he admitted. He slapped his hands together to create an air cushion to slow his descent, landing in a crouch next to the terrified Uraraka. He stood up, the green lightning fading. He dusted off his shoulder. You okay? He asked. Uraraka stared at him. She stared at the headless titan falling behind him. She stared at the monster who had just punched a god in the face. Why yeah, she squeaked. Good, the buzzer sounded. Time's up, Izuku exhaled. He looked at his hand. It was shaking, just a little. Not from pain. From excitement. For the first time in 10 years, he had found a toy he couldn't break instantly. One for all, Izuku thought, a dangerous grin forming. I think we're going to get along just fine. The taste of inheritance. The dawn of the entrance exam brought with it a sky the color of a fresh bruise. Purples and oranges bleeding into the morning gray. At Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, the waves lapped gently against the pristine sand. Izuku Midoriya stood by the railing, the wind whipping his dark green curls across his face. He wore his standard black training gear, the fabric struggling to contain the dense, corded muscle of his upper body. Next to him stood All Might, currently in his skeletal true form, looking both anxious and reverent. "The time has come," All Might said, his voice grave. He plucked a single strand of golden hair from his head. It shimmered in the morning light like a thread of pure energy. "Midoriya, my boy. This is the key. The culmination of 8 generations of strength, hope, and sacrifice." Izuku looked at the hair. He didn't look reverent. He looked hungry. Not for food, but for the evolution it represented. "It's just DNA," Izuku said flatly, breaking the mystical atmosphere. "Genetic material acting as a transfer vector for a stockpiled bioenergy quirk." All Might's sweat dropped. "Well, yes. Scientifically speaking. But it's also symbolic. Now eat this." Izuku took the hair. He held it up to the light. "You know," Izuku said, "Master Yujiro once made me eat a live centipede because he said it would teach me to digest poison." "Please don't compare One for All to a centipede," All Might begged. Izuku tossed the hair into his mouth and swallowed it dry. He waited. He flexed his hand. He checked his pulse. "Nothing," Izuku noted. "It takes time," All Might assured him, checking his watch. "About 3 to 4 hours for the genetic sequence to integrate. Just in time for the practical exam. But listen to me, Midoriya." All Might stepped closer, placing a bony hand on Izuku's shoulder. The contrast was stark, the frail, dying god touching the forged, living weapon. "You are strong. Stronger than I was at your age. Stronger than anyone I know without a quirk. But One for All is not just a battery. It is a will. It responds to emotion. If you use it with hate, it will burn you. If you use it with the intent to destroy, it will shatter you." Izuku looked at the horizon. He thought of the ogre. He thought of the demon back. "I don't hate," Izuku said quietly. "Hate is a distraction. I just want to see how far the ceiling goes. Just be careful," All Might sighed. "And good luck. I'll be watching." 2. The Gate of Judgment, Yue High School. The Fortress of Dreams. The H-shaped building loomed over the city, a glass and steel testament to the superhuman society. Izuku walked through the main archway. He didn't gaze up in wonder like the other students. He scanned the perimeter. Blast walls. Motion sensors. Reinforced glass. This isn't a school, it's a bunker. He wore the standard middle school uniform, but the buttons were straining. His gait was different from the other students. They walked with nervous, jittery energy. Izuku walked with the heavy, rhythmic thud of a predator patrolling its territory. "Out of my way, Deku." Katsuki Bakugo walked past him, shoving his shoulder. But Bakugo didn't shove hard. It was a reflex, a habit from a childhood that no longer existed. When his shoulder connected with Izuku's, Bakugo was the one who stumbled slightly. "Good morning, Katsuki," Izuku said without stopping. "Try not to choke on your own ego today." Bakugo gritted his teeth, but he didn't scream. He kept walking. The sludge incident was still fresh. He knew deep down that the hierarchy had flipped. Izuku continued walking, checking his exam ticket. He was so focused on the layout of the grounds that he didn't notice the uneven paving stone. He tripped. Or rather, gravity attempted to pull him down. In a fraction of a second, Izuku's nervous system fired. His toes curled, gripping the sole of his shoe. His core tightened. He was prepared to turn the fall into a forward roll that would bring him back to his feet without losing momentum. Suddenly, he stopped. He was floating inches above the concrete. His stomach lurched, a sensation of weightlessness that contradicted everything his training relied on. No traction. No leverage. Vulnerable. "Are you okay?" A bubbly voice floated into his ear. Izuku looked to his right. A girl with a round face, rosy cheeks, and brown hair was smiling at him. Her hand hovered near his chest. "It's my quirk," she chirped. "Sorry for using it without asking, but it's bad luck to fall on the exam day." Izuku stared at her. Uraraka Ochako, his mind supplied, reading the name on her ID tag. Quirk, 0 gravity. Touch activated. Danger level, low in combat, high in environmental hazard. "Release me," Izuku said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. He hated being suspended. It reminded him of Yujiro holding him over a cliff edge by his ankle. Oh. Right. She pressed her fingertips together. Release. Gravity returned. Izuku dropped. He didn't just land, he rooted himself, his feet striking the pavement with a solid thud. Thanks, he muttered, adjusting his bag. I'm Uraraka. She introduced herself, seemingly immune to his cold aura. You look really intense. Are you nervous? Izuku looked at her. Nervousness is a physiological response to uncertainty. I am not uncertain. He walked away. Uraraka blinked, tilting her head. Wow. Even his sentences have muscles. 3. The auditorium of noise. The written exam was a formality. Izuku breezed through it. The questions on quirk history, law, and mathematics were child's play compared to the ballistics calculations Yujiro had made him do in his head while dodging rocks. Then came the orientation. The auditorium was vast, filled with thousands of examinees. Izuku sat near the back, his arms crossed, eyes closed. He was meditating, visualizing the flow of energy in his body, waiting for the OFA integration All Might had promised. Everybody say hey. Present Mick's voice hit the room like a physical slap. Izuku winced. His senses were dialed up to 11. The volume was excruciating. Welcome to my live show. Today, we're gonna dig into the practical. Izuku tuned him out. He opened a small notebook, not his hero analysis, but a sketchbook of anatomy. He began sketching the auditory canal, wondering how much force it would take to rupture Present Mick's eardrums from this distance. Excuse me. May I ask a question? A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up in the middle of the auditorium, his hand raised like a blade. A spotlight hit him. The pamphlet says there are 4 types of villains, but you only mentioned 3. If this is a misprint, it is a shameful error for a prestigious school like UA. The boy spun around and pointed a stiff finger directly at Izuku. And you? The curly-haired student. Izuku didn't open his eyes. He kept sketching. You've been muttering under your breath this whole time. It's distracting. If you're here to mess around, you should leave immediately. The entire auditorium turned to look at Izuku. Thousands of eyes. Izuku stopped sketching. He sighed. The sound was amplified by the sudden silence of the room. He opened his eyes. They were green, flat, and bored. I wasn't muttering, Izuku said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried perfectly, projecting from his diaphragm. I was breathing. If my breathing distracts you, then your focus is fragile. How do you expect to concentrate on a battlefield with explosions and screaming if you can't handle a little noise in a chair? The boy with glasses, Tenya Ida, froze, his mouth slightly open. He hadn't expected a retort. He had expected shame. Sit down, Izuku said, turning back to the stage. You're blocking the screen. A ripple of whispers went through the crowd. Who is that guy? He totally shut him down. Present Mike cleared his throat nervously. Okay. Dig the vibe. The 4th villain is 0 points. It's an obstacle. Avoid it. Now get ready to rock. 4. The Culling Fields, Battle Center B. It was a mock city, indistinguishable from a real urban district. Concrete buildings, paved roads, streetlights. Izuku stood at the heavy iron gates. He had changed into a teal tracksuit, the sleeves ripped off to expose arms that looked like they were carved from granite. He wore simple martial arts shoes. No gadgets, no support gear. The other students were stretching, checking their boots, psyching themselves up. Izuku stood perfectly still, his hands hanging loose by his sides. He could feel it now. A low hum in his veins. One for all. It was there, dormant, like a sleeping dragon curled around his heart. Don't use it, he told himself. Not yet. If I use it now, I might kill someone. The output is too unstable. Let's stick to the Hanma basics. Start. Present Mick's voice rang out from the tower. There are no countdowns in real battles. Run! 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 While the other students processed the command, Izuku moved. He didn't run. He exploded from a standstill. Technique, the cockroach dash. By relaxing his muscles completely, and then snapping them into tension, he achieved instant acceleration. He left a cloud of dust where he stood. He was a blur of teal and green, shooting through the open gates before anyone else had taken a second step. Whoa! Look at him go! Someone shouted. Izuku was already 50 meters into the city. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. 3 robots. 2 one-pointers, speed types, and 1 two-pointer, a scorpion-like tail. Target acquired, the robots droned, turning their lenses toward him. Izuku didn't smile. He didn't frown. He entered the void state. The one-pointer lunged, a wheelbase charge. Izuku stepped inside its guard. He grabbed the robot's extended manipulator arm. Torque. He twisted his hips. Metal screamed. He didn't just stop the robot, he swung it. He used the one-pointer as a flail, slamming it violently into the two-pointer. Crunch. Both robots crumpled into a heap of sparks and twisted steel. The third robot fired rubber bullets. Izuku didn't dodge. He hardened his abdominal muscles. The bullets bounced off his abs like pebbles hitting a tank. Annoying, Izuku grunted. He closed the distance. He raised his leg high, impossibly high, a vertical split. Axe kick. He brought his heel down on the robot's sensory unit. The force drove the robot's head down into its own chassis, flattening it like a crushed soda can. 4 points. He kept moving. The observations of the elite. In a dark observation room high above the grounds, the faculty of UA watched the monitors. Banks of screens showed hundreds of students fighting, struggling, and using their quirks. But one screen drew the most attention. Center B, Midnight murmured, tapping a fan against her chin. The boy with the scars. Midoriya. On the screen, Izuku was currently tearing the treads off a three-pointer with his bare hands. No quirk usage registered, power loader noted, adjusting his helmet. No energy emission. No transformation. That's purely physical strength. He fights like a villain, Snipe commented, his voice tinged with unease. Look at the brutality. He doesn't disable them. He destroys them. He's aiming for the fuel lines, the joints, the sensors. He knows exactly how these machines are built. Aizawa Shota, standing in the back with a juice pouch, narrowed his bloodshot eyes. He's efficient, Aizawa rasped. He's not wasting a single movement. See there? He used the recoil of that robot's cannon to propel himself to the next target. He treats the battlefield as a resource. It's impressive, All Might said, trying to sound like an impartial observer, though he was sweating nervously. A fine display of, youthful spirit. It's terrifying, Nizu, the principal, squeaked cheerfully. He fights with the arrogance of the top of the food chain. Look at the other students in his zone. On the screen, Ida and Uraraka were fighting near Izuku. But they were keeping their distance. They looked more afraid of the green-haired boy than the robots. He's acquiring points at an alarming rate, Midnight noted. 52 points. 60. He's already in the top percentile. Nizu smiled, his paw hovering over a large red button. Well then, the principal chirped. He has the strength of a lion. But let's see if he has the heart of a hero. Release the Leviathan. He pressed the button. 6. The shadow of the zero-pointer. The ground shook. Izuku had just finished dismantling a three-pointer by kicking its head clean off. He wiped a smudge of oil from his cheek. 68 points, he counted. Enough to pass. This is boring. Yujiro wouldn't even use this for a warm-up. Then, the sun disappeared. A shadow fell over the main avenue of the mock city. Izuku looked up. It was colossal. The zero-pointer was not just a robot. It was a moving skyscraper. Its tracks crushed buildings like cardboard. Its green eyes beamed down like searchlights from hell. The dust cloud it kicked up was suffocating. Our run! It's huge! It's not worth any points. Get out of here! The other examinees broke into a panic. It was a stampede. They ran past Izuku, screaming. Even Ida, usually composed, was sprinting for safety. Izuku stood his ground, hands in his pockets. He looked up at the behemoth. It's big, he analyzed. Center of mass is high. Structurally unsound. But the sheer weight, if that falls on someone, they're paced. He yawned. Pointless. It's a scare tactic. Time to leave. He turned around, ready to walk away.